Okay.
All right. So could you start, and I'm sorry if you told me any of this a little bit before, but just a little more about yourself and kind of how you got into this work of counseling students.
Okay, most definitely. Firstly, what I need to clarify a little bit is that we don't do counseling. The program that we do, it's a school-based intervention called Resilience Stars, and it's a manualized program that I developed based on cognitive behavioral therapy. So they're both, it's evidence-based modalities, cognitive behavioral therapy and motivational interviewing. And what I did was to create this program I had to sit and think, thanks to, my husband encouraging me to just sort of write down everything that I would do to help a child be able to move from just expressing themselves appropriately, emotionally, knowing how to deal with stress and unhelpful thoughts, all the way to planning goals and putting that in a manualized form so that it's not counseling, because the core difference between counseling and what we do in sort of coaching, teaching, is that the counselors are required to probe. I don't probe the kids at all. They may share certain things, but it's always based within that lesson, right? And so when, for example, we take something called a wellness score, and so at the beginning of each lesson, we have an indication on if the child needs outpatient therapy. For example, we do a depression wellness score, and that gives us an understanding, if this child has suicidal ideation, we refer out to one of our partners, the Rutgers UMDMJ. I would call Ms. Patel from Rutgers, and I would explain to her that we have a child with suicidal ideation, and she will then start seeing them immediately, right? And so we continue, the child may continue on the program just to learn the socio-emotional. So that's a buzzword these days. It's really about resiliency and empathy. And it's universally it's universal because all kids would have to learn these skills. However, some may need these skills a lot more than others, right? And so it's typically 6 to 8 lessons.
Okay.
For just about 30 minutes, and these lessons focus on 5 things. 5 things with regard to resiliency building. The first is self-awareness, and that's like the most detailed part of it, the self-awareness. They start from the emotion cartoon. So that's something that I created as well. I actually got from my brother telling me about a Tony Robbins cartoon thing that helps people feel better, like sketching something. And I said, what if I could have kids sketch their emotions and then tell me if they could choose one just for the day? And they would usually say, you know what, I'm going to choose happy. Even if they had little bits of sadness, they realize that they have the power to choose happy. And so that's something we start all our lessons with, the emotion cartoon, and then we end with diaphragmatic breathing, which is something you would have seen me do on the first day for the teachers. And so that's just helping them. It's a little bit of relaxation, as well as they get into the program, it's also used in our mindfulness. And if you'd like, I could actually show you really quickly the program if it would be helpful for a visual. Or, sure?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what it looks like. So you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, this is what it looks like. It has like 101 slides, and I'm continually improving on it. But this is the core. I designed it for social emotional coaching. You were asking about my background. So in Trinidad and the Caribbean, I'm a clinical psychologist. However, when I moved to the States in 2014, November 2014, I think around 2016, I decided to get licensed as a drug and alcohol counselor. And so that's where the two modalities come into play, because I've seen firsthand CBT work really, really well, because it's about having an agenda. It's about helping the person to problem solve in the moment. It's not about the past. It's not about trauma or anything like that, per se. And then motivational interviewing, that is used a lot with persons with drug and alcohol challenges. And it was really powerful that we got an opportunity to sort of marry these two modalities in this program. Also for the fact that we serve a community that is pretty much surrounded by drug rehab, centers. So being able to understand the cultural impact, and kids having to sometimes see people shooting up on their way to school, and being able to talk about what I could do if I want to start using these drugs, right? So it's a very preventative type program. So we of course have to get the consent from parents for them to practice. And so what I've noticed is that parents actually message me, they text me to say, hi, do you have the Resilient Stars program available? And I was just surprised. I was like, oh, okay. Yes. So everything is kept private, apart from, of course, suicidal ideation or reports of abuse. I would say we have every cycle. We have Dr. Asif. She's at the lower school, and so she is PhD'd in a university accepted, accredited university. She's from India, but she recently started getting licensed for play therapy. But she uses the Resilient Stars program with the lower school kids. I would service the elementary school kids, and we also introduced a new program, math coaching, that my husband Sean is doing. He actually is born and raised in Newark, spent 17 years as an educator, and he's really, really passionate about seeing the community, just giving back to the community. So he helps out on Fridays when he's off. He helps out the elementary school. He's a certified teacher for math. So he helps with elementary and junior high school kids for math coaching.
He does math coaching with them?
Yes. So these would be kids that, what we're doing that's different to the tutoring is that we use the same two wellness scores, the grit, which is their ability to persevere when faced with difficulties around math, as well as their self-esteem. How much do they believe that they could really conquer math, or do they think that it's not for me, right? And so we're very, very, as I shared before, very culturally sensitive. And so he is empowering them as, Hispanic, and as the population of UHCS is the majority is Hispanic and African American kids, and Caribbean and Nigerian kids as well. And so it's just sort of giving them this added confidence, that you're great, that you know this, along with, of course, the targeted tutoring at the areas in math that they still have problems with. And by the way, UHCS has some of the finest math teachers. So we're just helping, we're just adding value there.
Got it. So it sounds like he combines kind of the math content with more of the kind of coaching around social emotional strain.
Got it. That's it. Yes. And then, so this is just a glance of the lesson overview. We have the first lesson, self-awareness, emotions and bodily reactions. And so for children who may have, so I said it's universal, meaning that there are some school-based programs that specifically want to work with kids who have trauma. But social emotional intelligence is something that, Daniel Goleman and other researchers have shown and proven that it plays a very crucial part with helping people succeed in the workplace, even if they're extremely intelligent. There are exceptions to the rule, but that that intelligence alone isn't what's going to help people succeed in life. It's being able to have empathy, being able to bounce back quickly, and being able to really add value to others, not just see people as I could use this person for this, but I really care about this person.
Mm.
And so I felt that it was really important to start with kids so that they start practicing these things early on and it becomes second nature.
Mm. And Ms. Lloyd, can I just pause just for a second and just so I understand kind of your trajectory of how you kind of started this program. So
Sure.
You said you were, did I hear right that you were a counselor in Trinidad?
No, clinical psychologist.
Clinical psychologist.
Yes, so clinical psychologists, we use tests all the time to inform our work, right? So before we even meet with kids and their families, of course, we meet with parents. Parents would say, my child is, not listening to rules, not paying attention at school. And so based on the first interview we have with parents, we'll decide, well, this might be ADHD that we're dealing with, but we test. So we would test for ADHD, we would test for anxiety, we would test for depression. And based on those tests, we would know how to best help the clients start to adjust and enjoy daily living, right? And then we test again to see how we're improving. And it was very, very satisfying, being able to say, okay, this is this specific problem that is causing this child or adult distress. And here are evidence-based things that we can do to help. And so I have always been passionate about working with children, right? I get joy from working with adults, but the most from working with children, the most. And so I knew that when I got licensed as a drug and alcohol counselor here, that I would not have been following the route of counseling adults, but rather the preventative piece. And so the preventative piece is more educational. So the drug and alcohol counselors could choose to do both counseling as well as education, but I've chosen just education.
Got it. Okay. And then after you got that license, is that when you decided to make this program, or when did you start creating the program? Was that after you started?
Patrick, I'm glad you asked me that. I'm glad you asked me that because I've been working on this program for years, even before entering the schools. I was just writing coaching manuals, just writing. And I think it was a way for me to keep channeling my creativity because I had a lot of barriers to try to cross when I moved here. I'm also Canadian. So when I moved here, I didn't know all of the ins and outs of even getting work. And so I just tried to keep my skills sharp. I became a Toastmaster. I was a Toastmaster from Canada, continued in Trinidad, and then continued here as well. And so just sort of constantly working on my skills and working on manuals led to actually my husband was working with the school in 2016. He had actually started a charter school, which he ran for 5 years, a high school. And then he moved on to help with UHCS. And he would come home telling me about, the executive director was telling him about the children having so many different challenges and she wished there was a way to support. And he said to her, well, my wife does mental health. Would you like her to write, a proposal? She said, sure, but we don't have any big budget. So, just let her write a proposal. And I think the first proposal was just to try me out to see, so it was just for a term. And I think the amount I can tell you was like $13K for that January to June term. And so I wrote the proposal. I told her what would come and, just really started cleaning out the manual. So you're actually seeing the most I would say you're seeing the most polished product in front of you, the most polished, because it's continually going at it, continually. We do surveys it's like a 360 feedback. We get feedback from parents, from teachers, from the executive directors, from the students. How is this helping? How is this working? And so I love when I hear my students call me their teacher. They're like, I love working with you, teacher, because that's all it is, just teaching these skills. Because I don't know what you're gonna think about this, but I've personally struggled with social emotional pieces. And I said to myself, I don't want, like for example, when I just went to Canada, having to wait so long to just land my first job. 3 months felt like forever to land my first job, and just sort of realizing that it didn't have to be a distressful time. It could have been a time to just rebuild and groom and get ready. And that's what I want kids to realize, that life is hard, without a doubt. I can't protect them from life being hard, but I can give them the skills that they can use to make better choices, to develop their executive functioning. That delayed gratification a little bit better, to buy them even more time to respond appropriately, to succeed in a way that I know that they can.
Got it. Okay. So the idea, it sounds like, is to really more be a series of lessons that kind of teach them these skills, rather than kind of focusing on their background or their past or things like that. It's really skills for the moment they can use.
Exactly. That's it. Because I can't go into counseling, so I refer out to UMDMJ, and they would be the ones to go into the past and work on those pieces. You got it. You nailed it perfectly.
Okay. Well, great. Well, so one of the other things I want to ask about was, when you were working with students this spring, right after, schools closed down and students were working remotely, can you tell me just about what that time was like for students and for their families, to the extent you heard from them? Just how did the pandemic kind of affect them at that time? What were some of the mental health, challenges they were facing?
Ooh, boy, I mean, what I can say, my paws are raising, because fortunately, what I could say is that the transition from the in-person to Zoom was easy for us, relatively easy, because of the strong relationships we had developed with the parents and families. So that was really an important and a crucial part of the making things seem less disruptive. What we found, parents who were nurses, for example, the frontline parents, nurses, police support parents, they said to me, Mr. Lloyd, it is rough. And just knowing that the children have, my daughter or my son, they have this outlet to be able to just process. One of the things we do, you see lesson 4, critical thinking. One of the things that they learn is to just process. So this is something that's affecting the entire globe, right? We all feel uncomfortable, and so just owning the fears, the discomfort, everything with them, and they could process it and get to the point where they realize that, what can I control? That's usually how I am. What do you think you could control? Well, you can't control the pandemic. None of us can, but what can you control? And they would say things like my safety, I could wear my mask, I could help my mom, my dad out a bit, I could clean up and just stuff like that. I could have a good attitude, I could still apply myself. And so I did see, to answer your question directly, I did see more and more kids, particularly those who showed that they already had levels of anxiety and levels of and moderate levels of depression. They started reporting more anxiety. They started reporting things like their sleep is just so out of sync. They would say to me, I'm going to bed at 1 a.m. and I could barely get up, and I'm missing classes. So there was this sort of, there wasn't structure. Like one child said to me, Miss Lloyd, I'm so used to the teachers telling us which class to go to and which thing to do, and I just feel so lost. And so it was just really getting them into first things first with problem solving. Can you create a schedule for yourself? And they're like, oh, okay. And I said, okay, now I'm going to share a sleep hygiene handout for you, and I want you to read it. And I want you to tell me, what do you think, the benefits of sleep are? And so they start to realize, oh, wow, I could actually control my own sleep cycle. And I could go to bed hopefully before 12. I tried to make, sort of do it in incrementals. So let's just aim for 11 o'clock so you can get some REM sleep. And I'll explain to them that is rapid eye movement sleep, and it helps with us repairing, the body as we sleep. And so they started making those changes, and they would say, it's working, I'm feeling better. It doesn't happen as quickly, but at least by the second week we meet, they're starting to say, I got my work done before it was due. Just those wins. And the more they win, the better they feel about their ability to win.
Yeah. And you mentioned, some of the anxiety that a lot of students felt, which is something I, noticed too when I was speaking to students this spring. What were some of the things that you were hearing that they were maybe concerned about or thinking about, like whether it's, the health risks or their parents and their jobs, or what were some of the things that you heard from them?
Mostly fears about their parents dying, fears about, just losing a loved one. That was the main theme, fears about losing loved ones, because a number of parents were nurses. A number of the ones that I've got into contact with were nurses or frontline workers. They had to be going out there. The other concern was just that they change. Like, for example, those who were used to just going out and they're more social, they were upset because they couldn't even have a birthday party. They couldn't go out and play with their friends. They can't hug their friends. So they were really, really upset about that. And then the other interesting part that I was just blown away by, children who had gotten into trouble, like fighting at school, were saying that they were upset. They were bored stiff at home, and they wanted to go back to school, and they wanted to change. They were ready.
They're like, I'll be good if you let me go back.
My jaw dropped. I was like, oh.
Wow. A newfound appreciation for school.
Right. That was one of one of the fundamental parts of resilience is learning new things, helping the neurons to keep bursting and expanding, and and so that is a core piece is for the children to be able to go into school and learn and feel good about learning.
Yeah. Were there any who, because I remember speaking with the former school leader last spring, and she did mention, there were a number of staff members who either personally or had family members who, were infected. Did you hear any of that from students, that they had family members that they were directly impacted?
Yes, fortunately, the ones who shared their relatives got better.
Okay.
We did have, in the lower school, we did have scholars who Dr. Asif had to support because they lost loved ones. So just being able to just process that in a safe space. And that was the other piece, is that because we've been with the school for so long, just them knowing that I see this familiar face, and when they go online, they can still see that familiar face. That helps with a sense of security, that, okay, a lot is going on, but just seeing that face just helped with the calming and, just going through the lessons and they got an opportunity to even just share, what was your story? What did you hear about it that you want to process? you know.
And just a quick thing to just make sure I understand the time. When did you start working with the school?
So we were called in December of 2017 just to start meeting with all of the, well, not all. We were initially just contracted with the junior high school initially. And that was the December 2017. I had to go in to meet with the principal, and she just shared some of her concerns, some of the things that she wanted to change, some of the workshops that she would have been interested in. So that's something, for example, like I've done several workshops for that school, and it's always the beauty about it is just sort of really creating the workshop specifically to address an issue that the school culture is facing. And at the time, I had to present on the adolescent mind. And you know, it was interesting because it was during the spring of the COVID-19. One of the parents, she has two children. I know I worked with one of her daughter, but she said to me, I remember you because I was getting so much trouble with my son. And when you did that workshop on the adolescent mind, I was like, oh, it makes sense. And I started laughing and I said, but oh my goodness, that workshop was so many years ago. Right, but it's only because I was working with her daughter, who's actually in junior high currently, that she got to share that, yes, Miss Lloyd, I know you, because I was introducing myself. And
wow. And now she's probably seeing the same adolescent mind things going on with her daughter now.
Right, exactly. You know, so it's nice to just sort of collect that feedback all the time on, you know, what's working, what they want, and the support that we could give. So we did give a lot of hours for the COVID support, as well as, you know, for the district.
And yeah, and can you say a little more about that work this spring? So just like, you know, if it sounds like you were doing workshops, continuing to do the lessons with students, but then also some workshops with parents.
Yes. So even before COVID, we had monthly workshops for parents on things like stress management, conflict resolution, drug and alcohol use, suicide prevention. We even did a small business startup, you know, just sort of because my past life, I was in Canada. I was a business coach and then a business manager for the Canadian Business Foundation in Ontario. And so I sort of pulled, you know, the skills in business planning. So you had parents saying, well, I want to have my own business and I want to do it the right way, you know, so we felt like that was a good ad.
Yeah.
You know, and as well, we were called to do a district day of reflection. You know, that was around the unfortunate killing, you know, that took place, and just really guided that process of meditating and trying to make sense of life, that even though so much cruelty and injustice and everything exists, that we still have to find a way to center ourselves. We still have to find a way to pull our own resources together and to say, what can I do to make a difference? And so that was, you know, the theme was very empowering, teaching them techniques, teaching them how to have conversations, not how to have conversations rather, but how to facilitate conversations around what the children were witnessing, because children were very, very pissed off. Some of them were very, very pissed off. Some of them were very afraid. I had children telling me they didn't want to go outside anymore. They didn't want to get shot by cops for the color of their skin. I was like, oh my goodness, you know, just helping them to realize that really, really bad things happen, but it's still a safe space, and you still have power to be able to write your story. So one of the activities that they had to do was try to just write their own story. And if they were a superhero, how would that story go? And sort of giving them that voice. So that it's not one of despair and hopelessness, but you are the future, my friends. You are the future, and so you have to develop that inner strength and the voice to one day make the policy changes that you want to see.
Almost kind of giving them a sense of like agency in their own lives. Like,
exactly.
And this, am I remembering correctly that this was a student who had been killed, not last school year, but the school year before?
No, this was oh man, the gentleman who said he can't breathe. And
oh, you're talking about this year, the George
yes,
Floyd protest.
George Floyd, that's right. This year. They were, I had to do a lot of work around their anxiety and fears about being shot themselves or being harmed because of the color of their skin. So in fact, my husband, he does not like to be boxed in to the idea of being like Black history. He says it's not just Black history. It's really contextual with understanding current events as well as understanding self-awareness around who we are as a people of color. And so he created something called Awaken Your Genius. And like the Resilient Stars series, it was all about lessons around finding yourself, finding your space, and understanding a lot of it through the lens of historical characters. And so that was for the summer.
That was this summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that I didn't realize before that. Kind of what you were describing about the day of reflection. That was this spring.
Yes.
In reaction to George Floyd's killing, when all the protests began. Yeah, that was actually one of the things I wanted to ask you about, was like the fact that not only was everyone in the middle of a pandemic and quarantine, but then this killing happens and these protests spring up, and all of a sudden people are talking about racial injustice.
Yeah.
So yeah, can you just say a little more about like how students were processing all that?
Whew, I tell you, I had to help, do the presentations to the entire district. So we did, I think we did the lower school first, then we met with the elementary, then the junior high. And so parents and children were on. And there was this, I remember this one child, he was so worked up about it. He stood out because he was there for the lower school presentation. He was there, the elementary school presentation. He was back again for the junior high presentation. And he was back again for the parents' presentation.
He went to everyone.
He went to everyone. And wow. I'm saying, well, I really appreciate your support, but it's the same presentation, just a little bit different for the audience. And he's saying to me, Miss Lloyd, did you look at the funeral? Miss Lloyd. And it's like, okay, just, being able to help him just process some of this, not just him, but being willing to try to answer some of these very, very delicate questions.
Yeah.
And give him a sense that I still have a future. And interestingly enough, he wants to be a detective. Right? So we would always meet every time I went to his class, and I would say, okay, detective, you're ready for today.
What do you remember what grade he was in?
Yes, he was in fourth. Fourth grade.
And when he was at these meetings, like what was he saying, or like what was his thought about the killing and what was happening?
He was actively participating, particularly. So I think what I did initially was just to try to get them to sort of identify what they wanted to be and why. Just share, and sort of focus is sort of pulling them a little bit out of having to address all of the inequalities at once, but just having them say, okay, well, I want to be a detective. And why? And do you have an A team? And then getting them, no, actually, I have to go back a bit. The first thing that they all had to do was their emotion cartoon. So I drew mine. I said, okay, I'm sad and I have tears. And I held it up for them. So I would usually take like a post-it like this with my drawing and hold it up for them. Then they all started processing. I said, okay, sadness, okay, this is how you're feeling. And so that sort of got them to get the feeling piece out, disturbed, sad, frustrated, confused, just be able to safely process some of those really difficult feelings. And then get parents to share. Of course, parents were sharing, well, this is awful, this is injustice. And then sort of moving them from that to, what are we going to do about it? Can we do anything about it? And if yes, what are we going to do? Just starting with a conversation. So I gave suggestions, like they could role play, they could role play different things in their house and in the safety of their space. They could meditate together. They could plan. I encourage parents to have children be part of the goal setting for the family. One family, a number of families voiced that they were going to move. They were getting out of Newark and they were going to move. And so
what was going on with the protests and things?
Yes, they just felt like they didn't want to be around. It's not just that. So for Newark, the protests and the COVID sort of hyper made things hyper focused. But these kids have been dealing with gang warfare. I've had a number of them come in the time that I've been at the school to say, I lost my brother. He was shot. We knew who killed him, or I lost my dad. He was shot, or my dad's in jail. So it was a lot of those very traumatic narratives that they have had to be dealing with before COVID and before, the Lloyd murder, right? So it was just sort of all of it, where some people say, okay, I'm getting out of Newark as like my first response. It's just too much. It's too much of it, too much. So just having them be able to have those conversations and plan that it's not just reactionary, I'm going to move out of Newark, but what is your 5-year plan? What is your 10-year plan? And how is your plan going to support your children's education? And just thinking about these pieces, and so it was very good. It was called You Matter. That was the name of it. You matter.
And during that presentation,
sorry, George Floyd. I said Lloyd.
I didn't even notice that. And it was the You Matter presentation. Was that the same as the Day of Reflection?
Yes, I was the same. So it was called You Matter for the Day of Reflection.
Got it. And during that or subsequent discussions with students, did you talk about some of the larger social issues like, the police brutality and racial profiling and racism, some of the things that are, shaping these incidents?
That is actually something that my husband, that is his forte. That is actually what he spent 5 years doing in his inquiry-based high school. It was a lot about addressing racial profiling and school to jail pipeline and pieces like that. So that's, as I try to stay in my own lane, best as I could. So he knows all of the history and the stats, particularly as it relates to America and as it relates to Newark. And so that's why he developed the Awaken Genius piece to, help students process, so that was introduced in the summer after everything. And so just students, some of the feedback he told me he got from students was things like they were angry that this wasn't being taught in school, like it wasn't on a school curriculum. They felt like this stuff should be that they should be informed about their things around their history as Black students within the school curriculum.
And so the Awakened Genius curriculum that taught some like Black history,
yes,
and racism, those kind of things.
Everything, yes, the injustices and the profiling. Yes, and I think what he does, he uses a very, very it's Paulo Freire based. But he uses something called a culture circle. And so it might just be a photo. Like I know one that he uses all the time is LeBron James. And then there's one with a gorilla holding a white female. And so he juxtaposes, it was called the King James. And so they just have to initially just say what they see. And then they start, he doesn't give prompts. He said, what do you see? You see a pen? Okay. You see a man? Okay. You see him holding a lady? You see a gorilla? Okay. And then bringing them to, oh my goodness, these are the images that we are bombarded with on a daily basis. And it just sort of starts to spark. It starts to spark in the brain, and it starts to spark conversations. And it's really super powerful, really powerful.
I see. Okay. Well, one thing I was wondering is when you're talking to students or their parents, and they're in the middle of the pandemic, they're in the middle of these protests over racial injustice, a lot of that are these big global issues that they can't really control.
No.
And so how do you help students and parents work through that of like they're being affected, they might be losing jobs or they can't go to school, but they also can't control that? No,
and you're absolutely right, Patrick, because they do have to express their own narrative. They do have to say, I can't go to school. One mom, my sister-in-law, she's an artist, and she's what you call, what is that word? One of these Renaissance women. They could do everything. So she does art and she does sewing, and so one day the pandemic started. We had a mom who she said to me, "I'm in the front lines and I'm scared because they don't even give us masks." And so my sister-in-law, she created masks, and she's very Afrocentric. So she put like one of the symbols on the mask, and so my husband went into it was an area sort of blocked off by police as being high COVID. He went in and he gave her the mask. So at least she could feel a sense of confidence when I'm going to work, I could have the mask.
Wow. Did she work do you remember, was she in like a healthcare or like?
Yes, she was at Barnabas. She was at Barnabas, the hospital.
Yeah.
And she wasn't a nurse. I believe she said she was just an assistant. She was assisting, and she ended up having to leave her apartment. They told her, the landlord said to her, you have to leave. So I said to her, well, you have some rights that's going to protect you from having to leave. And I was able to send her. So just being able to send people resources, and she read, and then I put her in touch with a realtor who helped us start looking for a home. But it was just so much to deal with. And this was a single parent, so it's just sort of helping. It was more, I think, Patrick, as like I was saying to you, partly coming out of my zone and sort of just sharing resources, whatever resources that I had collected, that the parents had access to these resources. So that was one piece, just practically saying, okay, let's deal with what has to be solved. And then the other level, the part where they were able to share their narrative, like, I'm scared, I can't have my birthday party, I'm upset. Getting them to voice that very, very clearly, very, very bravely and in every way that they can, if they wanted to draw it and then talk about it, and then getting them to what can I control. And I said, okay, just keep it really, really simple. I can control my attitude. Okay, good. I can control having a schedule to get up. And I said, is there a way for all of us, me included, is there a way for us to come out of this better and stronger? Smarter? Is there a way for us to be smarter? And so for the summer, I stepped away the Resilient Stars program and created a series that was specifically grit oriented, specifically powerful me, meaning confidence oriented. And so when they shared about their frustrations, we were able to go into we have a grit challenge. And their grit challenge was they had to either go on YouTube and teach themselves something new and make their own video, or they had to memorize something and then recite it and make their own video. And so you should see these kids. It was just so beautiful. They did a workout. So some of the boys chose workout videos for some reason. So you have their moms following them and the dads helping, and they're doing their push-ups, and they say, okay, this was day one. They realized that even in the pandemic, I could still be strong. I could still teach myself something new. I could still prepare. And so whenever this pandemic passes over, I'm ready to go to the next level. I'm ready with my own goals, with my own strengths.
That's great. And was that, did you say during the summer program?
Yes, that was the summer program. So we could not do the usual wellness score and individual lessons. It just had to be really, it was all group. There were no individual coaching sessions. It was all group. And they had lessons on grit, on confidence. They did powerful me, gritty me, and they did the awakened genius as well.
That's great. And do you remember, so some of the boys made workout videos. Do you remember what anyone else did? Like
yes. Let me see the one. Oh yes, there was like a second grader, and she did an art video, and she was drawing like a dinosaur. She's going through her tutorial. It was just the sweetest. One of the girls did. She was saving motivational quotes, and so she was saying her motivational quotes, and it was so powerful because Patrick, imagine this child would hide from the camera. All I would see was like her bedroom wall or something, and I'm hearing her voice, and she's talking, and coming to the end of the program, she's in the camera, she is volunteering to read for me. I'm like, wow. And here's the best part. Her mom says to me, this program was so helpful because her dad and I co-parent, and we've started talking because we had to communicate around the program, and we're telling each other, you're doing a good job, we're complimenting each other. He says, you're doing a good job. I was like, oh my goodness, it's like
that's that you didn't realize you were going to be helping with adult partners there.
Right.
That's great. So that that was a way for students to kind of, like you said, find things that they can control.
Yes.
And still do, even from their homes, even during a pandemic.
Yes, and just implemented themselves, and they got there was more. So Mr. Lloyd had he had his group. They were the junior high students. They had to write a speech. So his wrote speeches. And so we had a winner for the Awakened Genius, the speech. We had Powerful Me, that was the confidence. They had my cousin, she's an international model, and she visited to talk to them about her journey with confidence. And, she sent, photos like magazines and stuff that she was featured on. and just sort of helping them realize that it was more than an image, just really embracing all of you, your struggles and everything. So that was really, really good for the kids. Staff even appeared on that one. Staff popped. I was like, oh, hi, okay.
Some of the parents tuned into that one.
Yeah. I was like, okay, it was just for the kids, but you guys are welcome. It's more than welcome.
No parents allowed to ask questions though for that one.
No, they did. And
they did.
They did. Oh gosh. Oh man.
Well, I know we've been on for a while, so I'm gonna let you go. I just want to the last thing is just want to take it back to the kind of present moment in this school year. Mm-hmm. So now that you worked with him in the spring and the summer, what are you seeing so far this school year? And because I am curious, I think a lot of people thought they would be doing remote through the spring and then come back to school.
Yes.
How are the students feeling that they're still home, they're on Zoom?
Well, I have to tell you, I think, there was a lot of, I'm really impressed. I want to say I'm really impressed with the level of strategic planning that the former ED did and the recruiting of Dr. Oliver and her team, because I've noticed an interesting change. I was even saying to my husband, the kids are telling me, Miss Lloyd, I have class from 9 to 12, so you have to see me. I want to see you at like 1, okay? I'm like, ooh, very impressed, very impressed. The kids are telling me they have to go to school. And I was like, this is impressive, Patrick. I know it's like, duh, they should want to go to school. But when I got into the school, they just wanted to spend a lot of their time with me. And I would say, no, guys, this is not an opportunity for you to skip class. You have to go back to class. Oh, Miss Lloyd, come on. I'm like, no, I'm not playing. Go back to class. I have other kids to see that I really have to see. And so now I'm getting a different message. I want to see you too. So you keep my spot at 1, but I have to go to class. And so that change, I'm observing that change, and I'm really, really liking it, because it's showing me that they're taking their work and their future seriously. I'm actually not hearing, let me see, around the first week of school, I still had some kids that had higher levels of anxiety than others who were pretty upset that they weren't going back to school. They were upset. They said, I'm upset. I can't go to school. I can't go out. I can't even go for a vacation, just really venting. But now, because they have so much structure, right? They have structure in terms of, this is when I have to go on for my lesson. I'm either on Zoom or I'm in Google. They have so much structure that they are following. And they're also, what's beautiful, I think, about the remote learning is that they're also getting quicker feedback, because everything is automated. They're getting faster feedback on their grades. Right, so they're saying, Mommy, I got an 87%, and they could send a photo, right, of the work they sent to me. Look, Miss Lloyd, I got this. I'm like, oh.
That's great. And, yes. And Miss Lloyd, how often are you seeing students? Like in whether it's, I'm not sure if you do mainly individual or small groups, but how often is that?
Very good question. So we have Dr. Asif. She sees children once. She sees her group. She also does socio-emotional training for the staff, and they are relieved. They're very, very grateful. So she'd go in for about 5-10 minutes in their classroom and go through a lesson with them, and they'll all practice it. She's with the lower school Tuesdays for just 4 hours. And that's going to each classroom, class after class after class. I'm with the elementary and the junior high school, and that's Monday to Friday, but only from about 1 to 4 in some cases. And I do both the individual coaching for 30 minutes no more than. And it's literally no more than I'm like saying, okay, guys, we have to wrap up because I'm about to hop into a session with another student. So it's like, boop, boop, boop. So that's all week from 1 to 4.
And so you pretty much just do the individual coaching for about 30 minutes per student.
Individual, but I do have the junior high kids. They always, and that's where peers, of course, has the most influence, much to parents, their grief.
Yeah.
And so the peers meet with me no more than 3 because it has to still, I told them I don't have any more than 3 students because it still has to be useful. We have to be able to go through the lesson and you have the opportunity to share. And so we have 2 such groups for the junior high and they have their 30 minutes as well. And as I mentioned, Mr. Lloyd, he does the math coaching and that's just Fridays from 12 to 3.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, this has been so helpful. I hope this didn't take up too much of your time.
Not at all. I didn't even know where the time was. I don't even have like a time piece. And when you said a lot of time, I was like, we did.
Good. I know it flew by.
Yeah.
Well, yes, again, it was so helpful. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to be doing some final interviews and observations this week. And then hopefully then that will kind of start wrapping up for the story. And then I might have some kind of, follow-up questions for you as I'm kind of putting it together. So I might reach out to that.
Okay, it sounds like a plan. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
All right, bye.